I actually said to my husband the other day, we should sit down and make sure that this is in our budget, and I immediately thought, who even am I? Because she sounds like a responsible adult. Hey everyone, it's Aubrey, recovering perfectionist, queen of distraction, and we have officially made it to February, which means that we get to regroup and chat about our no-buy January, what we got out of it, and how we see it shaping our no-buy and low-buy months as we move forward into the year. Now, I'm not going to go too much into depth about the month because overall it is exactly what I said it was. We paid everything that we needed to while still putting $700 away in savings with no major slip-ups. I did decide mid-month to change our language arts curriculum, which set us back about $40, but that was a choice that I do not regret whatsoever. And then my 4-year-old had a major growth spurt and we had to size him up in just some of the basics. And then as far as food goes, we were overall able to stick to that $50 a week food budget. The last week we did end up going over by about $30. I think we just really desperately needed some fresh produce in the house. But all that aside, and now that January is officially behind us, the real question is, where do we go from here? Well, after a lot of reflecting on the month during and after, there are a few situations and topics that particularly stood out to my brain. So today we are going to be chatting about the 5 areas where I feel like things are really going to need to shift in some way for our family to really thrive financially over the course of the next year. So first I want to start with the area where I feel like I noticed the biggest impact on our day-to-day lives, and that was food. And specifically when it comes to how unprepared I am when it comes to meal planning. And it's funny because in ways I'm almost too prepared. And when it comes time to actually cook, I am so overwhelmed with the options that are available to me that I feel like we have nothing. So going forward, my plan is to actually make a plan. And meal planning has never been a strong skill of mine. I am very much a cook from the heart kind of girl. So rigid meal planning does not come naturally to me. And I can honestly say that I don't know what kind of system is going to work for me long term, but I do think that if I can at least get in the habit of when I'm planning our meals for the week, just roughly basing some plan off of the proteins that we have available to us in our fridge and especially our freezer, and then just let those things guide my shopping trip, I'm confident that just that alone will initially make some impact. Now, next, we're still on the topic of food, but this one is really about investing in our health and our home in the long run. Now, a few weeks ago when I had shared what food looks like for us during a no-buy month, I had talked about how I started buying non-organic items, apples, bananas, eggs, etc., and how my grocery bill was literally cut in half. And that was just so outrageous to me. And it really got me thinking about how much money we would save if we did stop buying organic food. But then someone in the comments asked my thoughts about whether organic food is actually organic, and that just sent me down a whole other thought spiral. I like to think that things that are certified organic are actually organic, but the truth is, unless we're growing our own food, we can't completely be sure. So this year, my husband and I decided that we are expanding our garden. When we first moved here, we had started with a 20 by 40 garden that we were able to get 2 gardening seasons out of, but then the parcel of our property that was on, we ended up selling, so we downgraded, and not downgraded, but we just built a smaller kitchen garden about half the size closer to the house, and that has served us well-ish over the course of the last 4 growing seasons, but the sun isn't great, so we don't get as long of a growing season as we wanted, so we are expanding our garden to the portion, it's the side of our house that gets far better sun. It's where our cherry trees are, it's where our raspberries are. And we know that this is going to be an initial investment up front, but we're confident that it will pay off once we start harvesting and preserving more of our own food. We are also planning on turning the current kitchen garden into a cut flower garden and then setting up a small roadside flower stand, which is something that I have been wanting to do for a very long time now, and I am just particularly excited about that. Now, food isn't the only thing that January exposed. It also made me realize how much I rely on my errands to get out of the house. So third, let's talk about my struggle with planning and my struggle to be spontaneous. And I really felt this in January, especially when it came to getting out of the house. Our home is where about 99% of our play dates happen, and without shopping trips or returns to do, I suddenly didn't have any reasons to get me and my boys out of the house. And even with all of our outdoor space, we definitely did start to feel pretty stir crazy at some point. Like there was one day that the boys actually asked me if I had any returns that I needed to do so we could go to Amazon Go in the park, because that's just something that we normally do. So moving forward, I want to be much more intentional about putting things on our calendar that aren't tied to shopping or package drop-offs. And of course, my goal for these outings is for them to be free or as low cost as possible. So I'm talking about things like the library, the park, the zoo. We got the boys an annual membership to the zoo for Christmas, so that's covered for us. Hikes, things like that. And these are all things that I know that I need to plan, because unless I have a clear reason to leave the house, I just really struggle to be a spontaneous adventurer. And then kind of on the same topic, but also not, I am really starting to be mindful about when shopping starts to feel like a getaway for me. Retail therapy, if you will, like especially during heightened times of like stress and overwhelm. Like for example, one day last month, we were on our way home from a grocery pickup and I noticed an estate sale just down the road from us. And I wanted to stop so bad, but we had cold stuff in the car. My youngest didn't have shoes on, like the stars just weren't aligned. And then the next day, my dad called me and he had stopped there and he said that they had a ton of baskets. I'm just a sucker for a good basket, which he knows. So a couple days later, when I had a chunk of time by myself without the boys, I decided to go. So I grabbed my keys and I hit the road. And of course they were closed, which honestly, that just kind of ended up being a blessing because I didn't end up having to wrestle with the temptation of having to walk away from something that I didn't actually need. And just what felt really clear to me in that moment was that it was never about, finding a basket or not finding a basket or whatever. It was just about needing to get out of the house alone. And that realization ultimately brought me back to the actual point that we're getting to here, which was one of my original New Year's goals. And that was to buy more secondhand, give things a second life, save money. In this particular instance, just kind of showed me how this goal could potentially backfire if I'm not careful. And not necessarily not careful, but not intentional, which I guess are kind of go hand in hand, but whatever. The whole situation was just overall really eye-opening, and that I need to be mindful about putting myself in estate sale, garage sale, thrifting kind of situations when I'm not actually looking for something specific. But then at the same time, I wonder, is putting myself in these situations and then giving myself the strength and control to walk away, is that just a good exercise in self-control? Maybe, because sometimes just going and looking at other people's old stuff is just a good fun time, even if you do plan to leave empty-handed. I don't know. What do you think? Would you avoid the situation altogether, or would you still go and explore just because? Now, this last shift isn't really about money. Well, it is, but it's more than that. It is specifically about what we are modeling for our kids. So just because we're learning to spend less doesn't mean that they don't get to learn how to spend. So throughout all this, the boys are still getting their allowances, and with that comes the freedom to make their own choices and their own mistakes. My youngest isn't really inquiring about making any specific purchases, but especially with my oldest, we do talk with him about most purchases beforehand. No matter how big or small, we're not controlling every decision. We just want them to learn how money works in real time, not growing up afraid to spend or feeling like it's something scary or stressful or just not knowing how to handle their money altogether. And just the mindset of being smart with your money has shown up in other areas. Like the other day, my husband and I, we were talking about how he kind of needs a new truck, but also buying a new truck and having a monthly truck payment is just absolutely outrageous. So he was talking about just investing the money in one repair each month to try and get as much life out of it. Instead of replacing it, it would still be significantly less than having that new truck payment. And I think that's really just such a good tangible example for the kids. Choosing maintenance over replacing things. I feel like in this day and age, people are so less inclined to repair something. It's just really quick, oh, this is broken, we're going to go out and replace it. I guess the moral of the story here for them would be patience over impulse. And I know that decision isn't necessarily fun or flashy, but it definitely makes the most sense, especially for where we are in this phase in life. And looking back on January, it opened up some really great conversations with especially my oldest, and especially when it came to food, why we choose certain things and why sometimes we say no so we can say yes later. It isn't about raising kids who never spend money. It's about raising kids who understand money so they can grow up to be adults who see money as a tool and not a coping mechanism, and not something that we use out of boredom or stress like their mom and dad have for so very long. So for us, these shifts aren't about restriction. They're about being intentional with our food, our time, our spending, and the example that we're setting every day for our kids. And I guess ourselves. And honestly, that feels like a much better goal than just not buying things. And that's that, and this is where we wrap things up. Overall, January was really such a great month when it came to the no buy. In just about every other way, it was very mentally and emotionally exhausting, but the no spend definitely gave us some extra sense of purpose. It helped us see exactly where we want to put our energy and our money, especially as we move forward into the year, and I'm really thankful that we did it. And I did honestly think that we were going to go into February and I was just going to have this sudden urge on February 1st to just buy all the things. But the truth is I don't. Well, no, that's a lie. I'm just kidding. 2 days ago, I was looking at schoolie buses and RVs so we can run away from all of our responsibilities and travel the country. But that's just seasonally depressed Aubrey talking, so don't listen to her. But in all seriousness, will I be buying dirt and flower seeds? Yes. Am I excited about that? Heck yeah. But even that, based on our goals, feels very intentional. I actually said to my husband the other day, we should sit down and make sure that this is in our budget. And I immediately thought, who even am I? Because she sounds like a responsible adult. So I think I might be a real grown-up now. But that is all for today. Thank you so much for taking a chunk out of your day to hang out with me. If you did a no-buy or a low-buy January, let me know in the comments how that went for you. I'd love to swap stories. And if you're not yet subscribed, you are invited. I think that next week we are going to clean or declutter something. And then the following week, I think we're going to walk through a week of my first attempts at meal planning. So we'll see how that goes. But that is all for real. I hope you're having a wonderful day and I hope to see you in the next one. As always, I love you, have fun, and be kind.